Hey, what's going on, guys? So I'm still working on some stuff, trying to finish up the freelance course, and at the same time not overdo it. So I'll be back on YouTube within 2 or 3 weeks or so with new content. And like I said, until then, I'll be releasing both guest videos and some projects from past courses. So in this video, we're going to build a vanilla JavaScript sortable list with drag and drop. And this is from my 20 vanilla JavaScript project course on Udemy, and I'll have a link to that in the description if you're interested. So in this project, we'll be using methods like for each, map, sort. We'll be using the spread operator. We'll work with the document object model, and we'll do a little bit of CSS as well. All right, so let's get into it. Okay, so this is a sortable list project, and my main focus with this project is the drag and drop API, which you can find here in the Mozilla documentation. And there's a whole bunch of drag events that we can use, such as drag start, which we'll be using, drop, drag enter, drag leave. So we'll be using a bunch of these in this project. And the idea is to just have a sortable list that we can put into order. And I chose to use just the 10 richest people. I mean, you could have a list of anything, top 10 of anything. And the idea is to just put it into the correct order, and we're going to make it so that on each page load you can see that it's in just a scrambled order. Okay, so we're going to scramble the list, and then we can go ahead and take one and we can move it to another spot, and you'll see we have a little highlight when we're hovered over a certain item, and I can drop it there and it's going to switch spots with wherever I drop it. So this button down here is to check the order. Now, I know Jeff Bezos is number 1, so I'm going to go ahead and put him there. And I know Bill Gates is number 2, so I'm going to put him there. And then we can go ahead and check the order. And whatever is correct is going to be highlighted in green. Whatever is wrong will be in red. Okay, I know Warren Buffett is number 3, so we'll go ahead and move him there and check the order again. And you can see that that's correct. All right, so like I said, the main focus here is drag and drop, but we're going to look at some other helpful methods as well, and a lot of DOM manipulation and stuff like that. Okay, so hopefully you enjoy this project, and let's get started. All right, so we're going to get started on our sortable list. Now, this is going to be a little bit different than some of the other projects where all the HTML is actually in the HTML file, because here we're going to generate all of the list items through JavaScript. So we're going to do the HTML first, which is going to be really quick, and then create a function to generate or output our list items into the DOM, the top 10 richest people, or whatever you want to use. If you want to use something else, that's fine. So let's start with the HTML, which will be very simple. So let's just put a title here of top 10 richest people, and we want to include our style sheet, which we're going to do, I believe, in the next video or the one after that. And then we're also using Font Awesome here for some icons. So I'm going to head over to fontawesome.com. And in order to use Font Awesome, you need to just log in. You can see I have an account and I'm logged in. And then if I go to Start for free, you can create a kit, which I already have one. So I'm going to say right here, my Traversy Media kit, and just copy this script tag and put that right in here. Okay, and then down in the body, we're going to have an H1, and we'll say 10 richest people. We'll put a paragraph, a little description. So we'll say drag and drop the items into their corresponding spots. All right, and then we're going to have a UL, and we're going to give this a class of draggable list and an ID of draggable list. And the reason for that is the class is going to be used for styling. The ID is going to be used to grab onto in JavaScript to manipulate the DOM. Now, we're not going to put anything in here. That's going to be put in through the JavaScript. Okay, so under the UL, let's have a button, and we're going to give this a class of check-btn and an ID of check. Okay, and then in here, let's say check order, and I'm going to put an icon in here. We're just going to use the paper plane icon, so FA-paper plane. And then finally we need to add our script to the bottom. So source is going to be script.js. All right, and that's it for the HTML. So if we go ahead and look at this, we can open this with Live Server. We're not going to see any list items, obviously, but we have the UL here. We just need to insert it using JavaScript. So let's jump into our script.js. And first thing we're going to do is just grab the DOM elements that we need. So let's say draggable list, and we're going to set this to document.getElementById, and we have an ID of draggable list. Draggable dash list, and then we also have the check, which is the button. So we want the ID of check, and we'll just call this check. Okay, so that's all we need for now. And then we're going to have an array of the richest people. I mean, you could use something else if you want, something that's, sortable. And then I'm just going to paste these names in here. And these are in correct order, so it's 1 through 10. And then we need to create an array called list items that'll represent, the list as we sort it, as it's scrambled, and so on. This is going to be initialized as an empty array. Okay, so this is where we're going to store the list items. And then underneath that, we need a way to keep track of the index of each list item. So we're going to initialize here a variable called drag_start_index. Okay, we're just going to initialize it with let because it'll change later on. And then I'm going to call a function called createList, which is going to be responsible for actually generating the list items. Okay, and we're going to create that function now. So this is going to create list items, or let's say insert list items into DOM. All right, so let's say function create list, and what I'm going to do here is we need to take these values in this richest people array, but we basically want to copy it or recreate it so that we don't scramble the original array, because we need this order. So what we can do is just use the spread operator, which makes a copy of it, and say richest people. And then we want to loop through it, so I'm going to add on to here a for each, which is a high order array method that just loops through the array. And inside here we're going to have some parentheses, and we'll say for each person, and we also want the index. Okay, so we put in a function here with person, which represents each item in the array, which is a string of a person, and then the index, which is 0, 1, 2, and so on. So within here, let's create a value called list item, and what we're gonna do is create a new list item element to insert into the DOM. So we can do that by taking document dot, and then there's a method called create item. I'm sorry, not create item, create element, because that's what we're doing. We're creating an HTML element, and it's going to be a list item. Okay, now we want to add an attribute to this. So I'm going to say list item, meaning that li, and then set attribute. And we need to have some sort of index to keep track of each list item. So I'm going to add a data-index attribute. When you create a custom attribute in HTML5, you want to use a data attribute. So data dash, and then this could be whatever. I'm calling it index. And we're going to set that to the actual index, okay, which will be 0 through 9 in this case. So that'll set the index attribute, and then we need the actual HTML. So let's say list item dot inner HTML, and we're going to set that to a template string with backticks, and we're going to have a span with a class of number, okay, because we want to display the actual number, and we can do that by taking the index. So we're just using template string here with a variable syntax or expression syntax. So we'll take the index, which starts at 0. We don't want to display 0. We want 1 through 10. So we're just going to add 1 to that. All right, and then we'll have a div. And let's give this a class of draggable, and in order to make this actually draggable with HTML5, we need to add draggable equals true so that we can actually click on it and drag it. Okay, and then inside that div we're going to have a paragraph, and I'm just going to give this a class of person name because that's what's going to be displayed in here. And then we want to display the value of the array, which is person. Okay, so we loop through richest people. For each one, each item, we're calling it person, and we're going to output it here. And then under that, let's have an icon. So this will be FAS, and let's do FA dash grip dash lines. So basically something to grab onto to drag. Okay, and that should be it. Now we want to take the list items array, which we initialized above, and we want to push onto it the list item, okay, which is that li with all this stuff inside of it. And then we need to add it to the DOM. So let's take our draggable list, which is the UL, and we're going to use the append child method, which does just that. It'll append the li into the UL. Okay, so list item, which is the li. And that's it. Let's save that, and let's take a look. So now you can see that each list item is now being output. We have the index +1, so we have 1 through 10. We have the name, which is the actual value, and then we have this grip lines icon. All right, now before we get to styling this and making this look better, in the next video I want to have it scrambled, because right now it's just always the same order. And the point of this is to have it scrambled so that you can take each one and drag it to the correct position. All right, so we'll do that in the next video. Okay, so now we have an array of the richest people, the top 10 richest people. We're inserting it into the DOM as list items. Now I want to scramble these so that when we come to the page, they're not in the correct order. And there's a few ways we can do this. What we're going to do is add on to right here where we called for each. We're going to add some other high order array methods. First thing I'm going to do is map. So I'm going to go right here above for each and do a map. And what map does is it will take the array and allow us to return a new array of whatever we want. And we need a way to, we need something to sort by. And we want it to be a random number that we sort by so that it can get scrambled. So what I'm going to do here is say for each one, I'm going to just call A. We want to return an array of objects, and these objects are going to have the value, which of course is A, and then also a sort value, which is going to be, we're going to say math.random, which will just create a random decimal. All right, now to show you what this gives us in the for each, I'm just going to do a console log of person, because that's ultimately what is getting manipulated here. Okay, and you can chain these high order array methods as many as you want and manipulate the array. So let's save that. Let's go back and open up our console. And over here, you're just going to see object, because what we've done is transformed it into an array of objects that has a value, and a sort value. Okay, and the value is obviously the name, and then the sort is going to be just a random decimal that comes from that math.random. And if I reload each one of these sorts, it's going to be a different value, different number. Okay, now what we want to do is take this and actually sort the array by this value right here, this sort. So we can do that using the sort high order array method, which I just want to show you real quick. JavaScript sort. If we look at the docs, so basically it sorts the elements of an array in place and returns a sorted array. The default sort order is going to be ascending, and it's built upon converting the elements into strings. Okay, and then it compares their sequences. Now, if we do this without adding a special function, I just want to show you real quick. Where should I do this? I guess I'll just do it right here. So let's say we have an array of numbers, and I'm going to delete this after. I just want to give you an example. If I do like 1, let's say 1, 3, 1, 10, 40, 302. And then I go down here and I do a console log of numbers.sort. Okay, just numbers.sort. And we take a look at that in our console. Let's see, it's going to be down here. And if you look at it, it's not sorted numerically, right? We get 1, 110, 3, 302, 40. And the reason for that is because, like it said in the docs, these are strings. It converts it to a string and then sorts it. So 110 would be after 1 if these are strings. Now, what we can do is change how it's sorted by using a compare function. So right here, compare function specifies a function that defines the sort order. And we can have two parameters, a first element for comparison and a second element for comparison. So what we want to do, and what we could do here in this example, is have a function and pass in the two options for comparison. And then we could return from that let's say A minus B. So the first one minus the second one. And then if we look in our console, now we have like a numeric sort, 1, 3, 40, 110, 302. So that's essentially what we want to do with these random decimals. So let's get rid of this. This is just for example. And then just like I showed you up above, we're going to add sort, and we're going to use that compare function. We'll use an arrow though. So we'll say A and B. And we just want to return from this A.sort, and we want to do minus B.sort. Okay, which is this value here. So now let's save that and let's go back. Now we're still just going to see object over here because we're still returning an array of objects. However, you can see the order that we're logging. The order is different now. We have Carlos, Bill Gates. So if we reload, now it's in a different order, now it's in a different order. So the array is now being sorted by this random value. So the last part of this is to map it back into just an array of strings of this right here, these values. And that's very simple. All we have to do is add another map after the sort and say for each one, we just want to return the value. Okay, because remember, we have an object that has a property of value, okay, with whatever that string is, whatever the name is, and now we're just mapping it back to that. So let's save that and go back, and now you can see we're logging each string. It's also back in the DOM, and it's random. Okay, so we'll reload, and there we go. So each time we reload, it scrambles the array. So hopefully that makes sense, and we'll go ahead and just get rid of that console log. We don't need that anymore. Alright, so we've transformed this ordered array. So basically we copied it, and then we went ahead and changed it into an object with a value and a sort. We did the sort by the random value, and then we turned it back into an array of strings, but this time it's going to be scrambled, and then we loop through and do the same thing we were doing before. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. In the next video, we're going to take this and style it and make it look a little better. Alright, so now we're going to do the CSS because this doesn't look very good. I want to move everything to the middle and style these list items and so on. So first thing we're going to do is grab a font from Google, fonts.google.com. We're going to grab the Lato font. So down here, we'll go ahead and choose the import. Okay, we'll grab that. And just at least while we do the CSS, let's just make this smaller so that we can see both at the same time. So let's paste that in. We'll import that font, and just like I do with just about everything, we're going to add a box sizing property of border box on everything, and then the body itself is going to be pretty. This is going to be pretty repetitive throughout our projects, just because we're just centering everything. So let's set background. We'll do a background color explicitly to white, and I'm going to display flex because I want to center everything, but I want it to be a column, so flex direction column, and we're going to align items to the center If I go ahead and save that, you'll see that everything gets pushed to the center. I want to make sure it's justified to the top, so we're going to use flex start for justified content, and then just set the height of the body to 100 viewport heights. Remove the margin, and we're going to add the font family, which is the Lato font. Okay, so that should do it for the body. Now we're going to move on to the draggable list, which is the UL that surrounds all of this. So a class of draggable dash list, and we're going to set a border around everything. So let's say 1 pixel solid, and we're actually going to use this color quite a bit. So let's actually create a variable for it. So we'll just say on the root scope here, let's set a variable. So we want to do dash dash. We'll call this border color, and that's going to be E3, E5, E4. Okay, and while we're at it, let's just add, we're going to have a background color, and these are just all gray colors. You can make it more stylish if you want, but I'm just going to stick to plain gray. So let's do C3, C7, CA. Okay, so now we can use these variables where needed. So right here, we're going to use our border color. So we'll say var, and we want our border color. And then let's see, the color of the text. Let's do 3. What is it? 34444F. Okay, actually we can probably put that in a variable as well. You don't have to. It's completely up to you. And I guess we'll call this text color. And then let's change that to our variable text color. Okay, so we have our color. Let's add our padding, or I should say take away any padding. So set that to 0. And then for the list style type, we're going to set that to none because we want to take the bullets away. So let's save that. There we go. So that still doesn't look very good, but now we're going to style the list items and the content within the list items here. So let's see, we'll do draggable list, li, and let's set background color to white, and let's set a display flex and set a flex value of 1. All right, and then what I want to do next is add a border after each of these list items. So except for the last one, there's no sense in having a border on the last one. So what we'll do is we'll set the draggable list item, and we'll use the not pseudo selector. And then in here, we're going to use the pseudo selector of last of type. So basically what this is saying is all the list items except the last one, and we're going to set a border bottom 1 pixel solid, and let's use our variable of border color and save, and there we go. So now we have a border on a bottom border on all of them except for the last one. So let's style the number. Basically I want the number to be like in a big square on the left, so that has a class of number. So let's take our draggable list and then the span with the class of number, and let's add a background color, which is going to be, I believe, yeah, it's going to be our variable of background color, which is the darker gray. And then we're going to set this to display flex because we want the number to be in the middle of the box. So we'll align items to the center, and we will justify content to the center as well. And I'm going to increase the font size of the number to 28 pixels, and then make the whole area have a height of 60 pixels and a width of 60 pixels. So it's just a square box. Okay, and then to take care of this spacing right here, I'm going to just change the margin of the name. Remember, each of these paragraph with the name has a class of person name. So let's say draggable list, and then person name, and we're going to set margin to 0 top, 20, and then 0, 0. All right. Now, in here we have a class of draggable. If we look at our JavaScript where these are getting generated, div with the class of draggable surrounds the person name and the icon. So I want to start to work with that. So let's say draggable. Okay, we want the cursor to be a pointer so that the user knows that they can actually click and drag. We're going to set display flex, and let's go ahead and align items center, and then we're going to justify the content to space between, so that any remaining space between flex items goes in between the elements. And then just set the padding to 15 so we bring it away from the sides, and set flex to 1. And there we go. So that looks pretty good. And you can see we have a cursor, so that hints that the user can actually click and drag it. So let's see what's next. When we click the check order button, which we will style this in a minute, what it's going to do is see if see which item is in the correct order. If it's in the correct order, it's going to be highlighted green. If not, it's going to be highlighted red. So we're actually going to have on the list item, I'm just going to grab this. So draggable list, li, and then on the li, we'll have a class of either right or wrong. And then we want to change the color of the person name depending on that. So let's change this to color. And if it's right, then it's going to be green. So we're going to have a color of hexadecimal 3AE374, which is like a very bright green. And then let's actually just, we'll just copy this. And then we'll change this right class to wrong. And let's change the color to a red, which we're going to do FF3838. All right, now to test this out, remember the li is being created within JavaScript right here, this create element. So just to test out the class, we could just take our list item and we could say class list, and we could do add, and we could add a class of right, and this will add it to all of them, and you can see now they're green. If we add a class of wrong, then they're all red. Now, we're not going to keep this here because, I mean, it doesn't make sense, but we will be adding this later when we actually have the event to check the order. Okay, so I just wanted to just quickly show you how that looks. All right, so we'll just take that line out. And then the last thing that I want to do in terms of this is when I'm dragging over, like if I'm going over Jeff Bezos, I want Jeff Bezos's the inner list item to be a little darker. Okay, change color a little bit. So that'll have a class of over. So let's add that. We'll go right here and say draggable list, and on the li will be a class of over, and then on draggable is where we want to add that, is where we want to basically add the color. So let's say background color, and we're going to set that to EA 3 times. All right, and just to show you, I mean, we could add the class of over just to show you that it changes that color. Okay, so I think, yeah, that's it as far as the list items. Now we just want to do the button real quick. So let's go down to the bottom here, and it has a class of check BTN. And we're going to set the background color to the variable of background color. I should say the custom property. That's what it's technically called. And then let's see, why is that? Oh, I get a quote in there. Okay, so background, and then let's set the border to none. Let's set the color of the text to our variable of text color. And then let's set the font size to 16 pixels. And then just add some padding So 10 pixels top and bottom, 20 left and right, and let's also add a cursor pointer here as well. All right, and then I'm just going to give it a little effect when it's active. So let's say check button and then colon active. So when we click it, I want it to just scale down a little bit. So we're going to use the transform property and then scale. And 1 is the default, so we're going to just do 0.98. So that way when I click it, it just, you can see it scales down a little. Now notice that border right there. I want to get rid of that. So we're going to add check button focus and set the outline to none. Okay, so now that border is gone. So that's the CSS. So in the next video, we're going to start to work on the drag events, because when I click and I hold this and I start to drag, we can fire off an event. When I drop it somewhere, we can fire off an event. We basically want to be able to just bring it to where we want. Okay, and then we want to proceed to be able to check the order and match it against the original array. So we'll get into that next. All right, so now we're going to get into drag and drop. Okay, we want to be able to grab one of these, bring it down to where we want, let go, and then it'll get put in that spot. And then ultimately we want to be able to check the order. But let's handle the drag drop events. There's actually quite a few. And if we look at the documentation here, the MDN web docs, you'll see that there's a ton of different drag events. So we're going to be using, let's see, drag start. So the user starts dragging an item. So we want to put that on the draggable class, which is, what we grabbing right here. So we want drag start. We want drag enter and drag leave. So basically when we enter and leave an element, also what else? We want drag over, because we want to have whichever one we're dragging over, we want to add a background color. We want it to be a darker gray. And then of course drop, which this has always confused me. I always put drag drop as the event, but it's just drop, and that is an item is dropped onto a valid drop target. Okay, so those are the events we need to use. Now, this create list that we have here runs automatically, and it sorts everything and it puts them into the list items. So right at the end, while within the create list function, I'm going to call an add event listeners function, and we're going to create that down here, add event listeners, and that's where we're going to do just that, add our event listeners. And there's two DOM elements we need. One is the draggable class, so let's say const, and we'll call this draggables, and it's going to be document dot query selector all, because there's more than one class of draggable. And then we also want the draggable list items. So this is going to be, let's call this drag list item or items. And then we want to add our event listeners. So I'm just going to loop through draggables. So for each draggable, and we just want one event listener on each one. So let's say draggable dot add event listener, and this is where we want to listen for drag start. And when that happens, we're going to call a function called drag start. Okay, and make sure you have an uppercase S here, camel case. And then let's see, on the, I'm just going to copy that. On the drag list items, so this will be drag list items, we're going to loop through. Let's call this item. And then on item, we're going to have actually a couple different events here. So the first one is going to be drag over, which is going to call a function called drag over. And then we're going to have a few more. Let's do 2, 3, 4. So this one here is going to be drag drop, and that's going to be called on the drag. I'm sorry, I already almost did it again. So this is going to be just drop. That's the event. And then this event is going to be drag enter, and that will call drag enter, and then drag leave, drag leave. Okay. So what should happen now is these events should get fired off when these functions should get fired off when we hit these events. So when I start to grab this and drag, it should fire off this function. Now we haven't created these functions yet, so let's do that now. So let's say function drag start. And I think for now what I'm just going to do a console log just so you can see which event is actually firing off. So this is the drag start. And let's see, we'll just grab this. We have what, 5 of these. So we have drag start, and then we have drag enter. So that we'll call drag enter. And then we have drag leave. Okay, and we have drag over. And we have drag drop. But the event itself is just called drop. All right, so let's save that. And now these should fire off. So let's open up our console. And I mean, I know there's not a lot of room here, but I'm just going to click on this and move it slightly. And you'll see we get drag start and drag enter because I've entered into this one. When we leave it, we get drag leave. And you'll see the drag over just keeps going because I'm still just hovering over it. Okay, if I let go, then the drag over stops and the drag leave runs. So the reason I did the console log is just so you can see when these fire off. Okay, so we basically have drag start and then enter, leave, and drag over just is continuously running as I'm over the element. Okay, now this might get confusing if I leave these console logs in, so what I'm going to do is just I'll leave them, but I'm going to comment these out. And you can check it out yourself, do it yourself, so you can see exactly when they're fired off. Okay, so now let's figure out what we need to do here. We have our events getting called, our functions getting called that are linked to our events, but we want to be able to grab one and let go and replace it. We want some other things to go on as well, like when I hover over, Michael Bloomberg or whatever, we want that color to change. That's probably the easiest, so let's do that first. So basically on, let's see, that's not going to be on drag over, that's going to be on enter. Yeah, so when we enter, we want to add the class of over. Remember, we have that CSS class of over, and when we leave, we want to remove the class of over. So on drag enter, let's just simply say, we can actually use this keyword, which pertains to the element, class list add, and we're going to add the class of over, which will give it a slightly darker background. All right, and then I'll just copy that and go into drag leave, and instead of add, we're going to use classlist.remove. All right, so that should be pretty simple. Let's grab this, and there we go. So when we're entering, it adds the class of over to the current element. We use the keyword this, which pertains to the actual element, the list item, and then when we leave, it removes it, and then it adds it to the next one. So we get that effect. All right, so that's pretty easy. Now, to be able to actually move one of these to another position, we're going to deal with this right here, this drag start index that we initialized up here at the top. So we're going to go into drag start, and we're going to take the drag start index, and we're going to set it to this dot, and there's a method called closest. So we want the closest, and it does just that. It'll look at the DOM, and we want the closest li, and then we're going to get the attribute of the data index, because that's how we tell which item is in which position. So data index. Okay, and let's make this a number with the plus symbol here. So we have the drag start index, and we can actually take a look at that if you want. Drag start index, and open up our console. Let's grab this one right here, and as I do the drag start, you'll see that this has a drag start index of 2. If I grab this one, it has an index of 0. Now, since we have that set, let's go down to, let's see, drag drop. And from here, now we want to create a drag end index. Okay, so we're going to say const drag, drag end index. And we're going to set that to this dot get attribute, and we want the data index. Data index. So basically, we're getting the start index and the end index. And let's put a plus sign here as well, so that's a number. Okay. Whoops. And then what we want to do with that is we want to swap them, right? We want to swap the one we click and drag with the one we drop it into. So we'll have a function called swap items, and that's going to take in the drag start index and the drag end index, right? And of course we want to remove the over class, so we'll just say this dot class list dot remove over, just so the dark background doesn't stay. And then let's create our swap items. Okay, so function swap items, and basically that's going to take in a 2. It's going to take in, actually the first one is the from index, which is the one we click and drag, and then the to index, which is where we drop it. All right, and let's just do a console log here. And I just want to show you something real quick. So I'm just going to do 1, 2, 3. And if I go and I drag this and I drop, nothing happens. And the reason for that is basically the drag over event is getting in the way. So the only reason I have drag over here is to prevent the default action. Okay, so what we need to do is just pass in an event parameter and simply call e.prevent default. Okay, so any event, it'll just prevent the default behavior. Now if I go and I drop, now you can see we get the 1, 2, 3. All right, so let's get rid of this console log here, and we actually want to swap the items. So we're going to say, let's say const, we'll say item 1, and we're going to set item 1 to list items, and we're going to have the from index, which is being passed in as a parameter, and then query selector, not query selector all, but just query selector, and then the class of draggable. Okay, so we're grabbing that first one, and then let's copy this down, and this is going to all be the same. We just need to change the index. This one is going to be the to index, and this is going to be item 2. Okay, so these will essentially give us the DOM elements. I can actually do a console log of item 1 and item 2. And now, if I go over here and I grab the first one and I drop it here, you can see the first one, which is Larry Ellison. We get the whole DOM element. And then the second one was Bill Gates. That's where I dropped it. So right now we're just getting them. Now we need to swap them in the DOM. So let's get rid of this console log, and we can swap the items by taking list items and take our from index, and we're going to use append child, which will actually do just that. It'll append a child element, and we're going to append item 1. Okay, and then we're going to take the to index. Okay, and then we're going to append item 2. So what this should do is swap the 2. So now if I take Bernard Arnault and I go down to, let's go to Bill Gates, and I drop, no, it's not working. I'm sorry, I did this wrong. From index should be item 2. Yeah, because from index is the first one, and then 2 would be item 1. All right, let's try that again. So I'll grab Larry Page and go to Bill Gates and let go. And now Larry Page is here and Bill Gates is up here. Okay, so this function takes care of actually being able to swap the items on drop. Okay, we call that right here, which gets called on drop. And we also remove the overclass because otherwise that gray outline or gray background would stay there. All right, cool. So now we're able to actually move our items around. Yep, so we can move them wherever we want. Now, the next thing we want to do in the next video is to be able to check the order, because the goal here is for us to get these in the correct order of the richest people in the world, the top 10 richest people. And of course, if you don't want to use richest people, you can change. All you have to do really is change this to whatever you want, just have it in the correct order here. But yeah, hopefully that makes sense. It shows you all the different drag events that you can use, and of course you can create other projects based off this, and you know, that use drag and drop. All right, so like I said, in the next video we'll go ahead and do this check order functionality. All right, so the last thing we want to do is to be able to check the order to see if it's correct, and then basically if it's in the correct spot, then it'll be green. If it's not, it'll be red. So we have the check item right here, or the check element, which is the button, and we just want to add an event listener to that, so when we click it, it fires off an event. So I'm going to put that at the very bottom here. Let's say check.add event listener, and we're going to listen for a click, and when that happens, we're going to call a function called check order. Okay, and I'm just going to put that right above add event listeners. So let's say function check order, and let's just we'll put a comment for swap items. So we'll say swap list items that are drag and drop. And then for check order, let's say check the order of list items on button click. Actually, we don't need to say on button click because that's, I mean, that's not part of the function. So for check order, we're going to take our list items, okay, and just to refresh, list items are right here. So it starts off as an empty array, and when we create our list, we go through and we basically just add all the HTML and stuff like that, add the data index, and then we append it to the DOM. But yeah, so we're going to take list items and loop through. So let's say for each list item, and we want the index as well, so let's put another set of parentheses since we want two parameters here. So one is list item and then one is index, because with for each and map and all that, we can get the index as well. So let's create an arrow function here, and then we want to get the person name. So let's say const person name, and we're going to set that to our list. List item. So basically the single item that we're looping through on each iteration. And then we want to use query selector, and we want the whatever is in draggable. Okay, so draggable, and then we want the inner text, and we're also going to just trim it, so any excess white space or anything. So we have the person name, all right, and then we're just going to check to see if the person name is not equal to richest people, which is our original array, and then pass in the index. Okay, so if that's not true, then it's in the wrong spot. All right, because we're getting the index of the list item and we're matching it to the index of this array right here, which is the correct order. Okay, so if that is not true, then we want that particular item to be red, so we're going to add a class to it. We're going to say list item dot class list dot add, and we're going to add the wrong class, which will make it red. Else, then we're going to take list item and class list, and we want to remove wrong. Okay, if it has the class of wrong, we're going to remove that, and we're going to add the class of right. So we want to add right. Okay, so we'll save that, and that should do it. So what I'm going to do is check out the original list right here, and let's make some of them right, some of them wrong. So Jeff Bezos, we're going to move him to the top. Let's see, Bill Gates is second. And let's see, Larry Page is last, so put him last. And then a bunch of the others should be wrong. So let's fire this off, click the button, and there we go. So you can see the ones that I put in the correct position are correct. If I move Larry Page up and I click check order again, that's wrong. Okay, if I move, let's see, Warren Buffett is third, check order, now those are right. And I mean, you could do this with anything. It's just basically a little sorting game. Okay, it doesn't have to be richest people. That's just what came to mind for some reason, but you could put anything you want. And of course, you could style it better if you want to get more into CSS. But hopefully this project taught you a little bit about drag and drop. That was the main purpose of this project, to show you those events. But yeah, so that should be it. So hopefully you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you in the next one.